Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. My name is Brian Sauer. I am joined by a distinguished guest who's been on the channel before. He is a documentary filmmaker responsible for such things as American Grindhouse, Against the Grain, which is part of a wonderful Vinegar Syndrome collection last year. But he's also done a bunch of documentaries that you're familiar with through Blu-rays and 4Ks that you've purchased, often through Vinegar Syndrome, but from other labels as well. Things like Beastmaster, Ticks, Phase 4, Six String Samurai. Mr. Elijah Drenner, thank you again for coming back on the channel.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Brian. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. And we are talking to you on the occasion of your movie, That Guy Dick Miller, being released on Blu-ray by Dekanalog, which is a label that you're a part of.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about it. We're going to get into that in a second, but being that I have you here and being that I am always curious about process stuff, can you talk a little bit about how your process works when you're starting out a documentary, whether it be something like, and we can talk about the specifics of That Guy Dick Miller in a minute, but just as a broad overview, how do you start a documentary? What kind of outlining or what kind of stuff do you do? How do you find the story, if as it were?
I wish I always knew the answer to that question. I think, you always want to, I think, how do you maximize? How do I maximize this thing? How do I make this thing as good as it can possibly be? So, you either find the story or you impose a story on it. I think you mentioned a couple that I think are good examples. I mean, with the Phase 4 documentary, I knew the story mostly because of Sean Savage, who we interviewed, and I just had him. He wrote this wonderful essay about it, which was just the blueprint for the documentary in a lot of ways. I mean, we went further, but um, so you start with that. Okay, I got the structure. I know the beginning, middle, and end. And so how do I put that into documentary form? You get a historian to talk about Saul Bass, Pat Kirkham, who can just sort of give us a broad stroke picture of who he was as an artist and a filmmaker. And then you want to go from that to Phase 4 and ask her to kind of connect the dots, which she does. And then you go into the family and you get the actors. There's only one actor who's still alive from that film. Luckily, we got him. That's the other thing, too. It's like you have these big ideas and no one says that they're going to do the interview. We got really lucky with Michael Murphy. Um, we had the interview all set and booked, but there was an actor strike happening, and
Mm.
actor strike ended the day before our interview was
Oh my
scheduled. So
gosh.
it worked out perfectly. Um, so having him was obviously crucial because he's the only one there who can talk about it, who's actually on the set. And then you've got Jeffrey Bass, Saul's son. Trying to think who was Sean Savage, who obviously wrote the essay. So you just sort of just cast this very big, wide net. You get way more material than you're ever going to want. And you're just sort of going through there. What I will do is I will color code points that I like. And so then I can just kind of look across the sequence file and say, okay, that's all section 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4. So that one worked out perfectly. With something like Against the Grain, which was something that was started unbeknownst to me.
Mm.
No, I knew that what we were doing this big box set, but I didn't really know we were making a documentary. And so there were a lot of interviews that I didn't end up using because there was no real imposed structure. There's like, let's talk to a fair use lawyer. Let's talk to a an archivist who does just experimental short form stuff. And it's like, then you've got these islands over here who are just talking about one little thing that don't really connect to the others. So that's one thing. I guess I've learned, since like making American Grindhouse, where it's like get people to talk about the same things because they'll just be these little islands off here talking about something and they don't cut into anybody else.
Gotcha.
So again, that kind of falls into maximizing. And also, saving interviews for the end is really helpful too, because when you find out that you don't have stuff, you uh, I think with Oscar was a good example. Oscar from Vinegar Syndrome, he was one of the last interviews that I did, and I was like, Oscar, say this.
Exactly. Fill in these holes. That totally makes sense.
Or just and not don't really tell
Connect.
him what to say. Don't tell
Yeah.
him. It's like, but just kind of explain to him the little pickle that we're in, and just like you're smart. Just kind of connect those dots for me.
Yeah,
And
nice.
so I think, with someone like Oscar, if you watch the Against the Grain documentary, you'll see that he literally bridged in the Milestone Films people because they were very important, but no one sets them up. And that's what we needed. So you just need sometimes people to just say a name, say a movie title,
Yeah,
say a night something, and then you can just take off.
totally
Um,
makes sense.
and then I don't know, does that answer all your questions?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, that's great. I mean, and again, it is a case by case, and it is like, sort of what you have, or in the case of that second one, like, what you have to deal with already, that kind of stuff. I just love that kind of idea of like, I think myself included, a lot of documentary filmmakers go out and are just like, I'm gonna just do this and not have an idea of exactly what they're doing. And then it becomes tricky to connect those dots, as you say, so so then you're really forced to find something. And then that's the difficult part, I think, for a lot of editors. And I'm certainly not an editor. So I just wanted to hear that process stuff. I love that kind of insight. It
Yeah,
makes sense. It totally makes
yeah.
sense.
You should sort of, I think you should be kind of naive and sort of open to the story because you might have this idea of what it's supposed to be, and then you'll figure out midway through that it's something totally different. I think when I started the stuff for Six String Samurai, these were all being remotely shot interviews. And as an editor, I thought to myself, well, these will never cut together. You're going to have one, it's going to be Lance, the director, was going to be doing these interviews. He's going to be wearing one shirt one day, one shirt the next. It's like, how do we cut this stuff together? It's not going to make any sense. So I had to, Brad, who was that Vinegar Syndrome at the time, it's like, I got to talk to Lance right now. We're shooting an interview in like 5 minutes. I have to talk to him this minute. And he's a filmmaker and he got it. He's like, yeah, you're right. So that's how we incorporated the process of it into the movie. So you can give yourself permission to visually change all the backgrounds. It's going to bounce around back and forth, and you to establish that uh, visual identity as fast as possible, and then you're home free.
Totally. That's great. I really appreciate that stuff. Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, okay, well, we can talk about how Dick Miller, that this doc came about, but I'm just curious for you as a fan of him, and I know you are. Do you remember when you first saw him? Do you remember when he started to register for you? Like, because for me, I thought it was the Terminator, but then I was like, but I saw Gremlins before that, and he mainly didn't. So Terminator might have actually been the point where I'm like, oh, I know that guy. That might have been it for me, but I don't know what it is for you.
Well, I think it was probably I think I know. I think it was seeing Gremlins 2
Mm,
and thinking that he died in the first one.
yeah, that's what I thought too.
That was my first like, well, I thought he died, but then anyway, so then I found out that it was like there was some voiceover radio where like the Futtermans were survived whatever. But I think it was a moment where I sort of realized both that I was a Dick Miller fan, but also that whoever's making this movie is just seeing if we're paying attention because there's so much stuff in Joe's movies where it's more than just his reoccurring cavalcade of actors. There's all these gags and jokes and film clips playing on television and all these homages to other films where Dick just sort of kind of fell into that. I mean, and so it was probably Gremlins 2 because I think Gremlins 2 is I think one of Joe's best movies and certainly one of the most crazy studio sequels ever
Yeah.
made. Where it's like because no one would really get away with that. Well, I think Beetlejuice 2 kind of got away with some of that stuff, I think, most recently, but that's been a long time, between like what, like 30 some years.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, that was just such a bananas sequel that I was just sort of tuned in on this was a filmmaker who was asking me if I was paying attention. And that's where I probably realized really that Dick Miller was someone that I should be paying attention to. And then retroactively, yeah, I'd seen Terminator, but I didn't remember him. But when I saw it again, oh, there he is again.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly of stuff like After Hours and
Oh yeah.
um, everything. But it wasn't until I think probably in college and film school where I really started to see his work that preceded my birth, with all the Corman movies, and certainly Bucket of Blood. But then all that sort of dovetailed into Joe's work. So it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love God bless Joe Dante for not only being one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, but also for making Dick part of that stock company. And he's in everything, right? I feel like he's in just about everything. Maybe there's one or two that he didn't get him in, but he's
Well, I
in
think,
just about every Dante film.
yeah, I mean, it's he was cut out of Amazon Women on the Moon, but
That's
the
okay.
footage still exists. It was in the TV version.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah, I think he's in just about everything.
Yeah. No, he's amazing. And this documentary, I rewatched it again last night. I love it. I think it's so much fun. And I love the energy that you have there. And
Thank
anyway,
you.
talk about how this got started, because I know that there's a little bit of a origin story to how the movie came to be.
Well, I'm a I'm terrible at self-promotion, but this wasn't my idea. Mm. And Tino Zimmerman, who I worked with a lot, he was a German company named Subculture, and he was doing the German DVD for War of the Satellites, and he said we should make a little documentary about Dick Miller. I'm like, that's an awesome idea, but there's no way you can do it justice for a little DVD featurette. But I think we shot stuff for it. Well, actually, Dick's main interview in the documentary, where he has much shorter hair, that was shot for War of the Satellites.
Okay.
And then we had shot interviews with Joe Dante and Jackie Joseph and Ira Bear and the Alan Arkush interview. Those were all shot for that. Ira and Jackie we reshot, and Joe, but Alan's interview remained the same. So really, from that project, only two interviews, Dick's original main interview and Alan Arkush's interview, were from that iteration. And Kickstarter came up, and things were seemed like it was the right thing to do. And so Subculture said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." So Lainey and I partnered with Lainey. It could have We didn't know each other. It could have gone south, but she had been wanting to do something about Dick and his life, and she trusted me. I trusted her. I also knew that if we were going to get this movie done, I needed to have someone other than Dick, who's close to Dick, who will be invested in this in some way, other than just, well, here they come to our house again, shooting. Like there has to be more skin in the game, and Lainey had that skin in the game as the producer with me.
Yeah, no, she's great. And that's one of my favorite things about the doc is seeing not only an incredible, I don't even want to call it a highlight reel because it's beyond that in terms of what you've assembled of all Dick's stuff. And I love what there's just little exclamations here and there, just a couple lines from Dick that are just always funny, always entertaining. That stuff's great. But I love seeing Dick and Laney together. That really is the emotional hook
They,
for me.
they are comedy gold. I mean, they are such a well-oiled comedy machine. It's it was, I mean, they were they were priced. I wish the camera was rolling as often as I was actually around them, because I mean everything was just always hilarious. So no, I it was really one of the, you can't always quantify what an experience is. Making something like this is one thing, but just like the personal experiences that you're having in between while you're on airplanes together or whatever, it's totally different. And I mean, they were just hilarious all the time.
Yeah, no, I adore that stuff. And his career is so incredibly vast that you can just and obviously you can't get to everything because there's just so much, but I
Yeah.
really think you did a nice job of including so much of it and taking these little sort of side, like pocket views of Corman for a minute, and then Joe Dante. So the movie becomes like a Corman doc with under the lens of Dick for a minute, and then a Joe Dante doc under the lens of Dick. And I just love
Yeah.
those little, sort of alleyways that you go down. That's such a neat thing.
Well, I mean, you talk about structure. It's like, this one's, okay, I know I can make a clip documentary out of this. Okay, I can make that. But then you think that's one where I didn't really know what the story was. So if you watch it, it's there's a imposed structure on it that maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but maybe to me, I feel like, oh, I could have done that better. But you think about Dick's career. What I discovered is that Dick's career has the perfect three-act structure, and he starts off one way and makes these films in the 50s, but he's trying to be a screenwriter. Has a has a little bit of an uptick in the 60s, trying to write screenplays, and then his career essentially crescendos. We make these films with Corman, then his all those Cormanites start to hire him, and then they work in the studio system. Dick's career essentially crescendos in the 80s to early 90s. And then you think, well, now what do I do after this? It's like, what do I do after that? So fortunately, when you talk about structure, what happened was while we were shooting this, Dick gets hired to do a short film in New York, which was actually not a short film. It was an installation piece, but it was, a short film with Abe Vigoda, and it was about character actors being cut out or actors being cut out of films. So Dick was playing his part, Monster Joe from Pulp Fiction. So you end on Pulp Fiction, and we start the movie with. I'm not explaining it right because I haven't thought about it for a while. But you start the movie with him now. He's working now. He's busy now. He's still working. This guy's been in the business for over 50 years and he's still making movies. The biggest thing I was always fretting was it was always going to be about the past. There is this guy talking about his past, but it's exciting to start something. Boom! Right now, there he is working. And
Yeah.
fortunately, through the movie gods, I guess it ends, or it's he's making a movie about the character that playing the character that he was cut out of from Pulp Fiction, which is kind of I wouldn't say the end of his career, but it's near the end. So it was close enough. So that gives you the bookend. It gives you that little bookend. That was just pure luck, but I knew we needed it. And um, yeah, you just talk about structure. Sometimes you have no idea what the structure is until you're just in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, I thought you did a good job with it. And like I said, great energy. I love the animations. Who did all the animated stuff
Oh
in there?
man, it was a bunch of people.
Oh, was it? That's great.
Mike Hegel, Mike Bose. Um, they were the two main ones, I would say.
It's
And then Mike Hegel, who's a friend of mine from Minneapolis, he is an instructor, and he had two students do some of the other stuff.
nice.
And I'm just forgetting their names because I only
No, no,
talk.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot about the names, but just in general, I
Yeah,
just think it's so neat to have the clips of Dick, which are so well. And like I said, he's got so many little one-off lines that you can just pepper through, and you do. And I love that. But then you throw that in with an already great, I think a pretty greatly paced, like it's well paced. And then you have those animation bits. It's just such a neat, it just really stands out. There's a lot of talk lately about Talking Heads documentaries. We see a lot of those, and I think people are kind of over them. And while yours does have Talking Heads, I feel like you have so much energy and so much other stuff. You have archival photos. You have, I don't know if
right.
that's like 8 millimeter footage of them. He and
Yep, Super
Laney,
8. Yeah,
Super 8.
you just look to see what they have, and they had everything you wanted,
Yeah.
basically. Had everything I possibly would have wanted.
Yeah, it's a great mix of stuff. And I think that really helps keep it moving and keep it interesting and definitely makes it stand out from any of those other documentaries in that way. And also Dick. I mean, Dick is just he's a fucking fascinating guy. I just love hearing him talk
Yeah.
present day, anytime. Like he's just such a
Uh,
character, such a character.
yes. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So throughout this process, obviously you were a fan of his. I'm just curious, when you're diving in to cut it, were there some films that you didn't know that you discovered
God,
through
yeah.
him?
There were a lot. I mean, I hadn't seen, well, I guess I still haven't seen Summer School Teachers.
Oh, that one's tricky. Isn't that like only on VHS or something? Maybe it's on a DVD
If
somewhere.
that, it's never been put out on DVD. I don't know if
Okay.
you would think that with the Corman stuff going to Shout that would have eventually, found its way out, but it never.
Yeah.
Um, it was kind of around the same time. I was also doing some stuff for Shout Factory. In fact, now that I say this, Jonathan Kaplan's interview was done for the Nurses DVD collection.
Which I have. Very nice. Very nice.
So yeah, so I don't know if Shout Factory knows that I used that same footage, but
That's
um,
great. That's great. It's great
but
that he's included. And there's so I wanted to also go through that in a second, like everybody that you included,
yeah.
but continue to talk about Dick Miller's movies if you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Summer School Teachers is probably the only one I still haven't seen. Oh, I never saw Mr. Billion, which
Oh, I
was
haven't seen that yet either.
another Jonathan Kaplan movie. Um, what hadn't I seen? I hadn't seen White Line Fever.
Oh, nice.
There's this little segment with Robert Forster who kind of bridges the gap when he's talking about Dick Miller as a character actor and all these parts as being a mosaic of who he is. There's just this very rapid fire series of clips that we just couldn't fit anywhere else. And it's pretty much all these 70s bits, some stuff on television, a lot of television stuff I'd never seen before.
Oh yeah, that stuff's cool.
And I think, yeah, there's a lot of the television stuff, but a lot of the stuff, there's a lot of weird 70s stuff of his I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen National Lampoon's Movie Madness before. I hadn't seen that, but
Me neither.
I think we use a clip from it
Yeah,
in
I'm
that.
pretty sure that's in there. I mean,
With
for me, the big ones were Rock All Night and War of the Satellites. I hadn't
Yeah,
seen those, and Rock All Night is, I mean, talk about a great showcase for him. That is the one for me. I mean, if
yeah,
you like him and you like his smaller appearances, like, and you have, and obviously Bucket of Blood is a great showcase, but Rock All Night, and even according to, I think Laney even says like that's Dick, like
Dick.
that character is
Yeah,
him, you
that's
know?
more like Dick because Dick, what really was, he can play this sort of nebbish character that he is, in Bucket of Blood, but he really was more this sort of hot-tempered, streetwise punk.
Yeah, yeah.
He was. And especially, he and Jonathan Hayes, when they were together, I mean, it was like, the stories I heard from them were just like, I mean, they were lucky to be alive sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. It's like that was hair raising. So, Dick being this uh Far Rockaway born Bronx kid growing up in New York in the 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s and 50s. Yeah, I think Rock All Night, that's kind of Dick personified, really. And I
Yeah.
think Ira Bear even mentions too, where he in More of the Satellites, Dick plays a hipster scientist. And he's
Yes.
totally, he does these little like hipster kind
The
of
head shake, the head shake. I love that.
but yeah, that was and that's I think kind of goes into what we're saying about his role in Rock All Night. I mean, he is a sort of hipster, streetwise punk kid.
Yeah. No, it's truly great. I saw it screened on 16 at the
Mhm.
Video Archive Cinema Club last, maybe that was this year actually, and it
Yeah,
played great. It was only a
yeah,
small room, but it really played great, and it was so neat to see it on 16.
yeah,
But yeah, that was one of the things I love about a documentary like this, where I'm familiar with him, but then suddenly I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen. Oh,
yeah,
I'm gonna check that out, and I end
yeah.
up coming away with a couple new favorites, which is wonderful.
Yeah, Sorority Girl was a film I hadn't seen until
Mm.
they showed it at the uh, the I'm forgetting the name of the venue in New York, Anthology Film Archive. They
Oh
showed
wow.
they showed it there when because we had a New York premiere there, and so there was a Dick Miller retrospect, and so I think John Davison gave his 16 millimeter print of Sorority Girl to see it, and Dick hadn't seen it, so I watched the movie with he
Oh,
and lady he'd seen it
but yeah.
60 years earlier.
That's his first, right? His first movie, I think he says. I
It
feel
was
like
it the
he.
first one? No, I think his first one. Well, we keep talking about this. I'm just going to keep answering your question. Thunder Over Hawaii is a movie I've still never seen.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That was, I think, his first one that he probably had a speaking role in that wasn't a Native American. That was like one of his first like bigger roles for Corman.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's fascinating stuff. I should just mention I should have done it up top, but in terms of who you got for the doc, is another thing is great. You have Dick and Laney, obviously.
Yep.
That's wonderful. But then you said Alan Arkush, Joe Dante, but then you have Roger Corman, Julie Corman, Belinda Belaski, John Davison, Ernest Dickerson, Fred Decker, Zach Galligan is really great. Archie Hahn,
Yep.
Jack Hill, Jonathan
Yep.
Kaplan, Larry Karaszewski, Leonard Maltin, Harry Northup, Fred Olin Ray, William Sadler, John Sayles. John Sayles is great in it. Mary Warnov. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's a wonderful collection of amazing, talented people that obviously love Dick and were, saying a lot of good stuff.
Yes, and that was the thing, you didn't have to twist anybody's arm to really get on camera and talk about Dick Miller.
Yeah.
You know, John Sayles was really cool. He was in town like doing I feel like he was just doing like a sound mix or something, and he came over. We shot the interview at Dick's house. He came over just after the sound mix, so like 7 o'clock at night, and
Oh
shot the.
wow.
So seriously, you cannot talk enough about just how amazing it is that people are just generous with their time like that. I mean, it's I almost feel like some people take it for granted where it's like people have lives, right? They have busy lives, but they stop what they're doing to talk to you about something that they agree with you in and believe in that is worth talking about. And we got extremely lucky. I don't think there was an interview that we didn't use. They may have only been there for a second, but I think I used every interview that we shot. And that goes to when you talk about, the first question is like, maximizing and shooting interviews. Um,
Well, I was listening to the commentary. I thought you said something about, for instance, like Zach Galligan's interview. You were like, what are we going to do with this? This is going to be 5 minutes. And he gave you
yes.
so much
Yeah.
stuff. You're just like, this is a whole movie right here, Like, so as
Yeah.
a documentary filmmaker, you're like, oh man, I got to pare this down. This guy's great. They give you
Yeah.
more than you need, like you say.
Yeah. Well, that was a good example. It's like, well, we'll do it, but I mean, um, I'm not to say that we'll play nice. It's like we were also obviously being very respectful of his time, but he came over, and I think it's because Zach teaches
Mm,
acting.
there you
He's
go.
an acting teacher, and so he can really pontificate and just roll about the virtue of any good actor. And everything he said was gold, literally. It's like I thought it was going to be he was just going to talk about working with Dick, and that was going to be it. But he knew Dick's over. I mean, he just knew all of his work, and he could pontificate on Joe Dante as well, and it was really amazing. Bill Sadler, same way. I
Oh,
mean,
he's so good in it too. I love him in
he
this.
just
And
he was just
And
in
it's
it.
and it was one of those things where I'm like, Bill Sadler, why the hell is he in this? And then you get to the end of the doc and you get to Demon Knight, and you're like, oh my gosh, Dick is so good in Demon Knight. And then you're talking to Ernest Dickerson and Sadler's great there, and oh man, so good.
Yeah, that's where I will say where I'm sort of, I'll be critical of myself. It turns into, and then he made this movie, and then he made that movie, and then he did this movie just for a little bit, which I kind of feel like, ugh, God, I wish there was some sort of thread that I could kind of just drape all these segments on, but you just have to just go through it really fast. And I think at least it goes quick, but
Yeah, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about that. I mean, there's only so much you can do structurally, and I feel like time is always a good way to do it. It just makes sense.
the only option.
Chronological. Yeah, it really just makes sense. So I don't feel that what you're talking about. I
Okay, good.
get what you're saying from
All
your
right, good.
critical point of view, but I don't feel it. I think
Okay, good.
I love the way it moves, and I
All right.
love where it goes, and it's just a neat reminder of. And then you get to Fred Decker talking, and that's one of my favorites of Dick's roles. Flamethrower, like that stuff is just fantastic. Also, by the way, I love the menu and what you did with the Dick clips that play during the menu. There's just little
The audio clips, yeah,
Yeah,
the
the
audio.
audio clips of Dick talking, just like flamethrower comes up and a couple others. You're just like, oh man, this is great. I could
That was
listen to this all
well,
day.
good. I'm glad you like that because it's like, as you know, this Dekanalog is the company I have with George and Lisa and it's like I got the rights back because this was out for 10 years. And so we put it out and I think to myself, it's like I make I make all these discs for us and I always think about these menu screens and it's like it has to be sort of a different energy than the movie. And it's like how do I give you a taste of Dick without just giving it all away? So just um just the audio was from those some of those film clips is all you needed.
It's great. It's great. It's a great touch. Just like the movie
Thank
itself
you.
has lots of great touches.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice and on top of that, and not to bury this too much, but you have the Blu-ray debut of Star Hops, which is something
Another film of his I had not seen when I was making this.
which I don't I think I'd only seen, you know what, I think it was one of those where I was like, this isn't really, I don't know if
Yeah.
that got a VHS.
It was on it had
Maybe.
well, here's the thing too. It had a VHS release, but it was of the TV cut.
Ah,
So if you go online, you'll see there's just alternate scenes to compensate for the nude scenes, which aren't that many.
yeah.
No, this is the only time, for the first time, that Star Hops has been put out on Blu-ray in the original theatrical version.
That's
So
exciting. That is exciting. As a guy who loves that sort of stuff, just an obscure 70s film. And Dick, unfortunately, Dick is only part of the front of it.
yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe he comes back at the end. And I watched it. I was like, okay, no, he doesn't. But it's still a really sweet film, ultimately. Very
Mhm.
cute. And he's great at the beginning. He supercharges the intro, the
No,
beginning of it.
I know. Well, you know who he's acting against? That you know who the guy is in the convertible who he's fighting with?
I don't think so.
Matthew Bright, who directed Freeway.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That
which was strange because I think at this time, because Matthew Bright was originally one of the members of Oingo Boingo, Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. So that
oh
would have been
my.
around this time. And then there's another really great short. You can see it on YouTube called Face Like a Frog, which Dick does the voice of the frog, and it's got all this great music by Elfman. It was
Oh, I
animated.
gotta see this.
Sally, oh, I'm going to murder her last name, Sally Krushniak, who
Okay.
is actually John Davison's wife.
Oh wow.
I believe she did the animated segments in Joe Dante's segment for Twilight Zone.
Oh cool. Very nice.
So yeah, you look up Face Like a Frog.
I gotta see this.
It's an awesome animated short, and I couldn't get that. I probably could have, but that
Yeah.
one just didn't fit.
Yeah.
And Dick is actually, I think, credited as Richard Miller in that. So
Richard, really nice. No, but I love that you did that. I love bonus movies, and I know that's not an easy thing to do. Obviously, there's additional licensing involved and
for
things like.
free.
Oh, really?
Bob Morosky. I'll give a shout out to Bob Morosky, who
Oh,
owns
let's have
the
that.
catalog. He owns the catalog for I forget the name of the company who put out that movie. And
What a guy.
I I have a long history with vinegar syndrome, and this was before or probably around the same time that I was doing that guy Dick Miller. We cleared out a warehouse, no, a storage unit space, actually multiple storage unit spaces in the desert somewhere. And I found the negative. I picked the negative for Star Hops was there. So I knew that Vinegar Syndrome had the negative. And I asked Joe Rubin if we could get it. He says, you got to ask Bob. He owns it. So I emailed Bob. He said, yeah, go ahead. I'm not doing anything with it. So they transferred the movie for us. And
Oh,
there
wow.
wasn't any touch-up work that needed to be done because the negative was practically pristine. So
Yeah, it looks great. It really does. Like it doesn't look like it's restored, but it doesn't look like a grindhouse,
no,
beat up print. It looks nice.
yeah, we could have done a little bit of work on it, but I was like, it's just a bonus film. If Bob, Bob can now, use the master for whatever he wants. If he wants
Yeah,
to pick it up, he can. He just gave it to us,
that's
seriously,
so cool. He's
very
he's the
indebted.
best.
I know. And he's just a fan. He was like, he just very happy to do it. So
That's so cool. I love hearing those kind of collaborative stories. And obviously I love Bob as an editor and as a physical media producer and lover. I mean, as we speak, I have my Hollywood
Ah,
90028 Blu-ray.
I'm still, I'm
It's
still
not here yet, but it's
Yeah, I'm
coming.
still waiting. I'm still waiting for that. I mean, I hadn't heard about the movie until, well, we were doing the Against the Grain thing. Everyone's talking about this. That was one thing where, he had a really good story about saving this movie that I was like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of this movie. It's like, so it wasn't until after that I really realized what it was. And yeah, I'm just very excited to see it myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bob's the best. He doesn't get enough credit, I feel like
No, he
sometimes.
definitely does not. Because Grindhouse, have yet to come across a release they have put out that isn't done with the utmost care,
Yeah.
and it's one of the best labels. Truly, Grindhouse releasing one of the best labels out there, hands down. And Bob's not out there like a big self promoter kind, so like I feel
No.
like they get left
Well,
behind a little bit. But he
no. The
does
thing is,
great work.
like, he takes on, big studio jobs, and then he takes that money and he pours it into movies that no one but us care
Yeah.
about.
I just
So,
that's incredible work. I can't think of anybody else that would do that, and I salute
no.
him for it. I salute him for it. Okay. Well, we'll probably wrap this up here pretty quick, but do you have any Dick Miller favorites? Favorite roles, favorite movies we haven't talked about, anything we missed that
I,
you
you know,
love?
this has just been I feel like I've probably talked about most of them. I mean, in
Yeah.
some form or another. Um, it would be really nice for someday to just really get a lot of those early black and white ones out there again. I don't know if that can ever happen. I don't know if, you know, when Corman, he sold his library to Shout, and I don't know if that included some of the early stuff. I don't really know. A lot of those things are public domain or lost, so it's wild to think that we might not have a chance to see some of these movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's every movie that he's in is a favorite. I
Yeah.
just
No,
I don't know
he
how to. I know it
he
sounds like a
elevates.
cop out to say it,
No,
but
but he elevates. He always has elevated, and just I love that story too about Kaplan. I think it was for Night Call Nurses, like sort of mistakenly bringing him in for an audition, and then going, "Oh, I know that guy," and Dick saying, "I can't audition,"
yeah,
and saying, "Yeah, he couldn't." But then you see Dick in every role, he nails it. There's not a role that he doesn't kill. He does it
yeah.
every time. He's so reliable, so good.
I really like his small role in the Slams. We have a quick clip of it in the movie. He plays a cab driver. What else? Uh, but if you watch his scene, you know, I know they cut he was probably riffing, he was probably improvising, but they cut his scene just a little too short. It's like he was probably cracking up the crew with whatever. He says, "Yeah, we was going to shoot my ear off. That ain't nice." You see him like open up his mouth, but then they cut. So
Oh,
probably he was probably
somebody
making everybody laugh.
Somebody blew the take. Yeah, that's
Who
hilarious.
knows? But
Yeah.
anyway,
No, with him I wouldn't be surprised. And that behind the scenes, it's been leaked, but that behind the scenes clip of him on the Burbs laying into Corey Feldman is pretty priceless, I gotta say. Pretty good stuff. And it was neat that Corey was a good enough sport to come on and talk about
yeah, yeah.
what he was going through at that time.
Well,
And
I don't know if he knew that I was going to use that footage. I don't know if he knew I was going to use that. I haven't heard back from him since. So,
yeah,
um, I always knew that would be funny, but I never really thought that it would be sort of this guaranteed the entire audience erupting with laughter whenever we showed that.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
it was, yeah, that is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, highly recommended. One of my favorite documentaries of the last decade, and
Thank you.
I've been singing its praises since I first saw it, but I really love this Blu-ray. Is really wonderful. It has a commentary with you and Laney and El Schneider, your DP,
Yes.
which is great. You have 8mm home movies, Los Angeles premiere footage, outtakes, a booklet essay by Calum. Oh, I'm gonna screw this up.
That's all right. You just email him.
Yeah, and introductions from you and Lainey, plus Star Hops, which you mentioned. So it's a really packed, wonderful special edition Blu-ray. You guys did a great job with it.
Thanks.
Um, what do you want to talk about Dekanalog in general? Do you guys have stuff coming up that you want to discuss, if there's anything, or
I
general broad strokes?
will say too, if you poke around that disc, you might find something else. I'll just say it right now.
Oh,
You might
interesting.
find something.
Okay. I'm gonna poke
So
around. That's very
look
cool.
around, you might find something that may be of interest to you. I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, Dekanalog. There's a million things going on all the time. Dekanalog, we do theatrical, SVOD, TVOD, but I basically run the home video side of it. So I mean, I basically had told George and Lisa, it's like, I've got this movie and we're putting it out. They said, fine, no objections there. But we've got, well, the rest of the year. I'm not going to spoil it, but we've got, well, both are October and November releases are both very good. The November one, I will say, without hyperbole, is something that no one saw coming, least of which me.
Oh, I like it.
Very excited, and I hope it leads to more. That's
Oh,
all I.
okay, that's a good tease. That's a very good tease.
And it's yeah, it's a very exciting release, and spent a lot of hard hours making that very special.
Excellent.
Um, and yeah, I think the rest of the year's done after that. We don't have anything in December. And then but 2025 is going to be kind of crazy. I think there's like a release every month, at least for
Oh
now there is.
wow. Excellent.
Um, so if your people are following our theatrical stuff, we did this Palfy retrospect in Brooklyn this summer. So all those Palfy movies will be coming out next year. Huckle and gosh, I'm going to murder the pronunciations of some of those movies, but they're all going to be coming out. And Art College 1994, great movie that I love. Sweet Dreams, another great movie that I think people will be really excited about. I don't really know. Maybe you can shed some light on this. Do you think that people who are buying these partner labels are where are their tastes? I mean, is it international? Is it older films? You think of like the Canadian International Picture stuff? Is it what is it? I mean, is it I don't really know.
I
I
mean,
have a hard time. People ask me, like what's the identity of Decanalog? I'm like, you tell me. I don't know.
I like that about the label. It's a very but I do like that you like just a couple of the other ones do have an emphasis on some newer stuff, and it's almost always stuff I've never heard of, which is great. But I will say it's hard for me to discern that group because it seems like they're so wide reaching in terms of the partners that it can't there's got to be some people that will buy everything, but I feel like
Yeah,
there's got to be others that are just like well, again, it's totally overwhelming too. Every
it
month,
is.
getting
It
so
is.
many, which is tough for you guys, I'm sure too, to be part. It's great to be part of that, but also tough to be part of this, morass of stuff that comes out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that said, I would say if I had to, they might lean slightly towards older films based on their taste in Vinegar Syndrome
On
stuff,
Vinegar Syndrome. Yeah,
right?
that's how I feel.
But
Um,
but that says I know but I happen to know a few two or three big time collectors that get excited about all kinds of stuff, including the newer stuff, including stuff that you're doing. So, it's hard to say, really. It's a
I don't
tough
know.
one.
I don't know, and so I feel like you know, we want to do service to the films that we love. Obviously, I think Mami Wata is a really special movie. I think that's people, if they haven't seen it yet, it's really great and it's totally singular. I can't, nothing else is like that movie. It's incredible. I love it. I'm not, proselytizing my stuff here, but
No, do it. Let's hear it. I
it's
love
a
it.
great movie.
Yeah.
And I think I think people, it's hard for them to sort of like just, I think people are sort of gun shy. If they're going to spend money, they're going to spend the money on what they know or feel reasonably certain they're going to want. And I think it's genre,
For sure.
um, maybe something a little sexy, and
Yep.
and uh, yeah, if it's like a foreign comedy, probably is not going to like really fly. But it has to have good artwork.
It's true.
I will say too. It's like we had this great great movie called Streetwise, a fantastic film. And we had Tony Stella do the artwork for it, and he really captured something in that artwork. And I think that sold really well. So I think, the imagery too is really important. And even though it's not an old film and the poster art is representative, truly representative of what the movie is, it still feels nostalgic. It still looks like art, I guess,
Yeah.
for rather than just like a still from the movie. So I think
Yeah.
finding that is sort of tough sometimes, like really figuring out just how do we hook someone with the artwork. And that's something that I'm still just trying to figure out.
No, it
And
is
it,
a huge, huge deal. You're right, though. I really do think impacts
yeah,
more than you would think, you know?
yeah, it's weird. And so I'm leaning now towards as much artwork as possible, with the exception of that guy, Dick Miller. It's like, okay, well, um, it just, I don't know if that slipcover is the right slipcover. I still don't know if it
I think
is.
it's pretty cool. I like it. I don't have it, but when
Yeah,
and seen the picture
I
of it, I thought it was pretty
yeah,
neat.
I was like, I was like, oh, this seems right to me. Because just doing artwork of Dick didn't seem real because you can't really, I don't know, just Dick's face is really all you need. And so I think, like with that poster art, that
Yeah.
Mike did that poster design. And we had artwork for the South by Southwest, which didn't work, I think. So I kind of remember from that. As much as I appreciate it, Charlie did that. Charlie,
Mhm.
who does all the stuff for Trailers in Hell, a great artist, but it didn't it didn't land the way I thought it should have for South by. So it's weird. It's weird. It's like this is like you think you have it figured out every time, and each release is its own set of problems all the
Oh,
time.
I can only imagine.
So
On
it's
so
kind of
many levels. On so many levels.
yeah. So it's hard, but next year is going to be awesome. So there's going to be a lot of really great stuff. And I think if anyone has any questions about any of those movies, to just write us.
Yeah. 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 Follow them on socials. You have your socials, your Instas, your Twitters,
Mhm.
Facebooks and stuff, and
Yeah.
definitely keep an eye on that stuff. But I appreciate your tease for this year. I'm
Thanks.
very curious about this November title now. This is
Yeah, it's
so
going to
intriguing.
be awesome. And like I said, no one saw it coming, and I kind of didn't think it was going to happen, and then it did, and so we had to scramble to make
Nice.
it time for November.
All right. Very cool. Well, I thank you so much for coming on and talking about
Thank
this. I
you.
thank you for your continued work in the physical media space. Like I think there's some stuff that I read out that people know, but I think people don't really understand just how much work you're doing in this space. I mean, it is your job, so it's like not
Yeah,
like I mean, you're doing other things too, but you're touching so many different labels. It's not just Vinegar Syndrome.
yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well,
So
the thing is, it's a very small world too. So, either I find out about something or somebody finds out about it, or knows how to contact me. It's like I'm constantly forwarding emails about companies in France and Sweden trying to license things, and so you're just sort of in the mix, and it's a very small, tiny little insular world. And like an example of that, Eureka put out that Message from Space Kinji Fukasaku movie, and I emailed them. It's like, guys, I made a really cool making of documentary with Sonny Chiba and Kenta Fukasaku. You should really put that out. It was for the German DVD. And so then connect them to subculture, and there it goes. It's on the disc. So little things like that. It's like it never would have happened if they knew about it, but they didn't know how to get a hold of subculture.
yeah.
So little things like that. It's like boom, just make it happen.
I love it. I love that stuff. I mean, because there's so many physical releases from so many labels around the world and I'm pretty dialed in. Like not as much as you, I'm sure, but I'm pretty dialed into that stuff. And even I will find like, oh, Hertzberg will put out Cutter's Way, and I'm like, what is this? These little documentaries. What there was some foreign release of Cutter's Way that I didn't, what I mean, and that's a
Yeah,
movie I'm totally into. So it's
yeah,
obvious there's gonna be tons of stuff that's never gonna those connections aren't gonna get made, and those things are gonna fall by the wayside. But I love it when you spot something and you're able to say, hey, grab this because I already did the work, and it's just,
yeah.
so that I hope more of that continues to happen. And as that insular community, I hope you guys continue to communicate with each other and help each
Oh
other
yeah, I
out,
mean, we all have to work together. So it's very it's easy and it's fun and it's like it doesn't I don't get paid a second time or a third time or the fourth time, but it's like, you want the work to be seen. And it was like, Sonny Chiba passed away, a number of years ago. And this is like, as far as I know, the only time he's really talking about working with Kinji Fukasaku on this not so great science
Yeah,
fiction movie. And I had no idea what he was saying, but God, it was a great interview.
that's so cool.
But yeah, so yeah, you're just constantly just trying to you see opportunities, and it happens. I think it happened too with David Gregory with Severin when they were doing that Ray Dennis Steckler box set. I'm like, stop the presses, guys. I have a whole got footage of him shooting behind the scenes from that movie. Stop what you're doing. I will give it to you. So,
Nice, nice.
but yeah, I mean, just it's all goes in the same well, right?
Well, it's all appreciated, man. And thank you again so much for coming by. Folks, keep an
Thank
eye on vinegarsyndrome.com, the partner label tab, look for Dekanalog and see what they've got going on every month. And look forward to their next releases. But definitely check out That Guy Dick Miller. If you haven't seen it, it is well worth your time and a movie that I love. So,
Yes, and even if you don't like the movie, it has Star Hops on there too.
yes, exactly.
I
Check
think
out
that's
Star Hops.
I think that was really important to get something else on there that was sort of Vinegar Syndrome adjacent, where it
Yeah,
was
no, that could have easily been just a standalone Vinegar Syndrome title. Yeah, I
yeah.
think, so.
But yeah, sticking that on there, props to Bob for letting us have it. So,
So cool. So cool. Well, anyway, thank you again so much, sir. And we'll
cool.
talk to you again at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian, for all that you do as well.
Uh,
Seriously, I see all your updates all the time, and you cost me a lot of money.
well, I apologize for that, but I do love this stuff and I love just keeping up with it is a full-time job basically. So
Sure is. Sure is. All right,
so
man.
anyway, thanks everyone for watching and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Adios.